Hey everybody, it's a Mad Master here. I am doing this video because I've taken an interest in this case. I've done a couple of true crime things with this channel, and I might continue to do so if there is enough interest. I noticed that when I did the Shanann Watts and a couple other things, people were interested. So I I all of a sudden got really interested in this case like a month or two ago, and I don't really know really where it ends because it is kind of like I would describe it as almost like the JFK assassination of true crime cases because there's so many rabbit holes and everything. It's not cut and dry from what I have seen so far, but I found that if you look at local journalism with these cases, there might be a lot of more revelatory things that are found. So, for example, I found this article, and this one is really interesting, so I'm going to go through it point by point. This is JonBenét Ramsey, how the investigation got derailed and why it still matters. Now, this Alan Prendergast is a legit journalist. I would say that this is a pretty legitimate resource as well. It's kind of like a local paper in the area. It's kind of I think it's like a free reader kind of weekly thing that they have. And here in Madison, we've had the Isthmus. That's what it's called. So this kind of reminds me of that. So this is kind of in the area. JonBenét Ramsey, how the investigation got derailed and why it still matters, what's changed since we published the story on Colorado's coldest case 10 years ago. Not much. So this involves the Whites, the Fleet White and so forth. So I'm not doing this to really much to, what is this crap? I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just kind of going over what this happens to say about some of these details, which are really fascinating to me. Story was published in December 2014. We're republishing in the wake of the Netflix series. So, yeah, I mean, enough said about that, the Netflix series. And the sad thing about the Netflix series is the Joe Berlinger, was early on was pretty like influential in the documentary, the true crime field. So with his whole thing about the West Memphis 3, the Paradise Lost with his partner who's deceased, as far as making those documentaries. But anyways, it's kind of sad. I don't know what happened to him or if he's really still legit at all, But anyways, bad news often comes in the night. It arrives in a whirl of dread and confusion, like a drunk trying to get into the wrong house, shattering the pre-dawn silence and bursting our dreams. When Priscilla White answered the phone at her Boulder home at 6 in the morning on December 26, 1996, she knew that something terrible had happened. Well, that's pretty interesting. Why else will anyone be calling that early the day after Christmas? News got worse. So, JonBenét's been kidnapped. Come over right now. Call the FBI. Interesting. She hung up before the stunned Priscilla could say much of anything. Priscilla and her husband, Fleet White Jr., had been with John and Patsy Ramsey. This might actually bring some, I should note, some, I'd say like just a more of a clarification about a lot of things that are going around. A lot of people have this idea that they know about this case. Like there are many things that there haven't been like it's almost like at a job where you have a workflow. You have a straightforward process. It's like there's nothing straightforward about this, but someone could write out, the series of events in a better way, because people always miss these things. But this is a really good article, and seems like good journalism to me. So, Fleet and Priscilla hurried to their friend's house. The police were already there, and more friends summoned by Patsy were on their way, but Patsy was inconsolable. She sat on the floor, clutching a crucifix and praying to Jesus. "They have my baby," she moaned. All right, I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit. I'm just going to kind of go in the highlights of this article because I think it's more interesting. So we already know about the foreign faction and all that. And they did what they could do to be useful. John collected Burke Ramsey from his room, and Fleet drove him to the White's house to keep him away from the awful situation. As the day dragged on with no word from kidnappers, several visitors got a glimpse of police photocopy of the ransom note. Odd lines of movies. So Priscilla was struck by the taunting tone of the note, which was addressed to Mr. Ramsey. She wondered who could hate John Ramsey that much to put him through it. This she believes it's someone familiar with the layout of the Ramsey home, a 3-story, much modified 2-door with a labyrinthine basement. Priscilla herself had lost her way more than once going through there. It looks like, oh wait, the few times she visited. All right, so we have all this stuff, and there's a lot of debate about, Fleet Ramsey and opening the door to the wine room or whatever, and the storage room known as the wine cellar, it calls it, and there was no light switch, or the light switch is actually deeply into the room and stuff. I've seen a few rooms like that through the years. And then, let's see, Ramsey turned on the light. It seems like he set that up in a way. It seems so set up. Like, I don't know, not Fleet, but John Ramsey. So maybe he'll sue me for $500 million or whatever. I don't know. I don't have $500 million. The events of the Ramsey household have been subject to thousands of articles and dozens of books. I would say probably more like hundreds of books, because they have that guy, the true crime people on. They have all these guys on YouTube that are writing books about it, and all this stuff. The events of the girl been bludgeoned, strangled, and sexually abused. Oh, shit. Forensic evidence, particular. I'm going to skip ahead. There's a lot of stuff in here. Police investigative file now exceeds 60,000 pages. This is 2014. I wonder where it is now. So, Alex Hunter elected to prosecute. All right. So this is interesting. Fleet White. The death of JonBenét Ramsey was a tragedy, Fleet says today, but everything that's happened since is horrendous. For the Whites, the question of who killed JonBenét or why the investigation stalled isn't simply fodder for a parlor game or online chatter. The case turned their lives upside down because of the close association with the Ramseys before the murder. What they saw in the days that followed, they emerged as key witnesses. Initially strong supporters. This is a really interesting note in here. We've already heard about this. Initially strong supporters. There's absolutely no way it could be a family member. Priscilla told police in her first official interview. They eventually became highly critical of Hunter's handling of the case and what they perceived as a powerful influence being exerted by the Ramseys' well-connected attorneys. Now that's really interesting, isn't it? Found themselves with targets on their backs of credibility under assault from several self-interested parties in the Ramsey case. Denamde, I haven't seen that word much, so sorry. I've read that word before, I just don't know how to pronounce it. Meanwhile, it's kind of a pretentious word. Meanwhile, I don't care. I like looking up in the thesaurus and using words that are more complicated and stuff for people, myself. So, and learning new words that way. Meanwhile, the Ramseys received this highly unusual apologies and exoneration. I like the quotes there. From Hunter's successor, Mary Lacey, based on DNA evidence that now appears to be far less conclusive than Lacey claimed. That's interesting. The DNA. The DNA. They keep just repeating that without anything happening. Over the years, the Whites have been courted by the likes of Jane Pauley, Connie Chung, and Lawrence Schiller, hoping to wrangle their confidence and their secrets. Tabloid writers, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to go through this. In the last few months, though, the Whites have become far more outspoken in their long quest for answers. They have been emboldened by the release last year of documents indicating in 1999. Now, this is really interesting. The JonBenét grand jury had voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on a charge of felony child abuse, resulting in a death and an accessory charge. Hunter declined to sign the indictments, which, Let's see. Remained a secret for more than a decade. Let's see. Let's go back. And Hunter is the. He was like the DA, I believe. Let's see. Which remains a secret. Okay. The Whites have gone to court seeking to get still suppressed pages of those true bills released. So this would be interesting if they released these indictment documents. I agree with that. They have appeared before. I watched this the other day. Actually, I was on another channel, another JonBenét Ramsey channel, basically. Boulder City Council, yesterday, seeking other documents related to the case, and they agreed to talk to Westward, get it, like Westworld, but Westward, about what they know. For the longest time, we didn't talk to anybody, Priscilla says. We wanted to be good witnesses. If there was ever a prosecution, that we realized there wasn't going to be one, so we wanted to make sure that we wouldn't infect our children. We didn't want to be carnival freaks. Okay. I'm just skipping ahead of some of the more interesting information. Trying to reset the record straight. I agree with them, actually. Murder of a commercial game, almost Christmas, blah, blah, blah. Evil comes in. This is interesting. As a geography, and of course the children that brought the two families together. Fleet had grown up in Southern California surfer culture, worked in his father's oil and gas exploration business, and married Priscilla in 1979. 1994, the Whites moved from Newport Beach to Boulder, knowing hardly a soul there. But 2 doors down from their house in University Hill was another recently transplanted family, with 2 kids close to the same ages as theirs. John and Patsy stapled themselves to us. That's an interesting use of terminology. They really liked our kids, liked us, and they were nice folks. We had fun. We had birthday parties. John Ramsey had started a modest computer component business in his basement in the Atlanta suburbs and built it to a highly successful company, Access Graphics. In 1991, Lockheed Martin bought Access and moved its headquarters to Boulder, keeping Ramsey at the helm. Reached $1 billion in revenues. That's funny. His wife, Patsy, found the move disconcerting. Boulder, with its liberal politics and casual ways and disdain for mink coats, was a world away from Atlanta. I'd like to go out to Colorado, actually. But her husband's growing prosperity helped smooth the way. The Whites and Ramseys came from opposite sides of the country, but they shared many common interests, sailing, which may figure into that ransom note, by the way. But you can watch other people for that. I'm not going to go into the sailing club and all that stuff. I don't know. Birthday party, pageants. That's interesting. The real tension. I'm going to go just skip ahead a little bit because people can look at this article or read elsewhere. Real tension in relationship began to develop in the immediate aftermath of JonBenét's death. Following the discovery of her daughter's body, Patsy descended into a Valium fog. You can tell actually watching those interviews with her. For many of the family's friends, it was a time of shock and sleeplessness and frayed nerves. Behind the scenes, a legal team was already assembled to protect the parents' interests, or rather 2 teams, one for John, one for Patsy, which is strange as hell. December 26th, just hours after finding the body, Fleet was surprised to get a call from Mike Bynum, an attorney, and this has been debated between whose idea was to get them an attorney as far as the Whites go. Bynum, attorney and Ramsey family friend who had offered to help Patsy and John find appropriate representation and have fended off initial police attempts to formally interview the parents. Ridiculous, by the way. The next day, Fleet had his first interview with the police detectives, and then, at Bynum's request, went to the lawyer's office later that afternoon, where he was introduced to an attorney from the prestigious law firm of Haddon, Morgan, and Foreman, as well as a private investigator. Team Ramsey wanted his own debriefing on what Fleet had seen and done. That's really weird. Over the next couple of days, as the JonBenét case began to make headlines, Fleet heard wild speculations on talk radio on John Ramsey's son from a previous marriage. He called the police, demanding a press release stating what cops and insiders knew to be true. The young man wasn't even in Boulder when the crime occurred. Says he received an angry call from one of John's attorneys, warning him not to interfere. The situation deteriorated further when the Whites flew to Atlanta for JonBenét's burial. They were expected to stay at the home of Rod Westmoreland, John Ramsey's financial advisor. But the Whites felt ill at ease among the Ramseys' Atlanta friends and alarmed at the direction it seemed to be heading. I'd never been to the South before, Priscilla says. It was completely different from Colorado, California. Very pretentious maids. Everyone was drinking champagne. I finally looked at the woman who was supposed to be our hostess and said, "We can't stay here. You don't know what we've been through. You're worried about whether we're using your Baccarat crystal glasses." So all of a sudden, we were the crazy ones. That's pretty funny. Several accounts of the trip to Atlanta have claimed that there was a blow-up between Fleet White and John Ramsey. Some have even hinted that the meltdown had something to do with JonBenét's murder. The Ramseys' own account in their propaganda. The death of it, sorry, I had to say that. Doesn't go that far. I don't know. I feel bad for him too. I don't know what happened. I'm just going to say. I don't think Patsy did it, but I think she was a victim of this whole thing, it seemed like. But who knows? But it does portray the Whites as unduly agitated. Fleet's behavior in particular is erratic, unreasonable, and vaguely threatening. White's version of what happened, supported to a significant degree by contemporaneous notes and conversations with detectives, is quite different. There was no blow-up. They insisted somewhat testy conversation between Fleet and Westmoreland, who took him aside and told him to back off. The Ramseys had lawyers, private investigators, and crisis management firm. Why? To look after them now, Westmoreland explained, and they were planning to stay in Atlanta. I got really pissed, Fleet says. I said, "You do that, and it's not going to go anybody's way." And I told Priscilla, "We've got to get out of here and talk to John." The Whites visited with with Jeff Ramsey, John's brother, and they tracked John down at the home of Patsy's parents, Don and Nidra Powell, or whatever. The conversation was passionate but hardly menacing. The Whites said, "We just laid out a case for John, why he needed to get back to Boulder." I told him, "What you do in the next 24 hours is going to define the rest of your life, except for propaganda that movies like on Netflix." Said that you need to talk to the cops. Patsy needs to talk to the cops. We need to find out what happened to JonBenét. Ramsey, you're going to sound like OJ. That's awesome. I'm just kind of skipping through this. All right, they fired us. We were telling them what to do. Blah 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 blah. I'm going to go down a little bit. So this is really interesting details. I highly recommend this article, by the way. This is really fascinating stuff. It goes on. There was an outside counsel to Lockheed Martin. Wow, okay. That's wild. Now we know what happened with Boeing, and all their stuff that they did the last 2 years, They want to protect their own. So, who knows? Steve Thomas quit in 1998. I'm reading that book right now, actually, that he wrote about it. Let's see. Grand jury. It's really strange. People running the investigation had long ago decided against filing charges in the case. The Whites wrote, "The motivation for presenting the case to a grand jury has little or nothing to do with obtaining new evidence, grilling reluctant witnesses, or returning an indictment. Everything to do with sealing away facts, circumstances, and evidence gathered in an investigation and a grand jury transcript." That's pretty scary, actually. But I kind of agree with that. Let's see, Ramsey case of Lockheed Martin sold them $200 million to General Electric in late 1997. So all this stuff about I don't know. There's rumors like John Ramsey saying he was poor after all this. I don't know. $200 million is a lot. I don't know how much he would receive for that, but So this whole delay, he's talking the grand jury and stuff. It's crazy, just crazy stuff. So, all right, what he did not mention, I'm gonna the indictment, and then it was sort of half-ass cleared, sort of later. Let's see. Lou Smith, they talked about him. Miniseries, what? Oh, Protest, the miniseries based on Schiller's book. I'm reading Schiller's book now. And I'll probably read Foreign Faction next after that. Stun gun. Whites were chagrined to learn that John Ramsey had said in his police interviews that he thought Priscilla was the sort of person who might own a stun gun. He used the words "fat cat," a term found in the ransom note. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because there's a True Crime Garage did a feature on some of this stuff, or some feature podcasts on this. So, which is actually something I'm going to look up right now, and I'll show you what it is. true crime garage pornography and I'm just gonna I'll find it. It won't show pornography, don't worry. Poems and pornography, that's what it's called. So they go through some of what I'm about to talk about in this, what they're going to talk about in this article, because this is really interesting stuff. I don't know what to say about it. I find the Whites to be less sus than the Ramseys, obviously, but this is just really weird. Stranger's attack came from the shadows and maybe there's like some truth to this, but it's not like not them that did it or something. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but we can see. Stranger's attack came from the shadows from someone the Whites have never met, allegedly. I'd recommend listening to that podcast if you want to learn more about this. And somewhere between, maybe the truth is somewhere in between, because the guests on that podcast are a little bit out there, some of the stuff. It was an allegation so absurd, so unsubstantiated that it could have blown away in the wind, but in the mire of the Ramsey case, it flourished with long-lasting repercussions. One day in February 2000, the Whites found a message on their answering machine from a Daily Camera reporter seeking last-minute comment on a story. It was going to run a pedophile ring and the PDF file, I'll say that, and the Ramsey case. Next morning, splashed across the front page was a copyrighted story by Barry Hartman, the paper's opinion page editor, announcing new information that could be the major breakthrough on the JonBenét case. Information came from the 37-year-old mystery woman from California who claims that suffered years of sexual and physical abuse dating back to when she was 3. Much of the abuse had come during holiday parties, she said, and involved asphyxiation and blows to the head, similar techniques, in her view, to those based on or used on John Ramsey. Although the perpetrators of these ritual abuse parties were explicitly identified, the article went on to explain that the woman said she knows the Ramseys through the Fleet White family, said the godfather to her mother is Fleet White's Senior, 86 of California. Hartman's report noted that the Boulder police had interviewed the woman for several hours and were skeptical of her claims, but her attorney Lee Held described her as one of the most credible witnesses. And then the punchline came from District Attorney Alex Hunter, who was quoted as saying, that's really weird that Alex Hunter would go down this road, but of course, was quoted as saying the woman's story was very believable. And see, these are my thoughts. I think that there could be some truth to this, because that podcast really went through a lot of stuff. I don't think the Whites necessarily are involved with this, though, but I don't know. Open years, okay, learn about the woman. Nancy Krebs, okay. She had a documented history of sexual abuse by a family member who had been convicted of sexual assault in 1980, and her grandparents had been good friends with Fleet White Sr. That much was true. She said she'd contacted Boulder attorney Lee Hill, who represented represented a local man in a civil case related to the Ramsey investigation because she'd seen him on television. A therapist was urging her to come forward what she knew about Hill. What she knew. Hill, in turn, introduced her to Hartman. So this is really interesting. I find this to be kind of a very weird twist to this case. Like I said, it's very... it's like the house is very labyrinthine, you know. All right, let's see. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Hill talked at length about the need to protect his client from a vengeful ring of abusers, including members of her own family, expressed his belief that the supposed rift between the Whites and the Ramseys was just subterfuge. Subterfuge or subterfuge. You say subterfuge in role-playing games, so subterfuge. When the police, sorry, I had to do that. So I see that word. That's one of the things you roll. When the police sat down with Krebs and Hill, described huge problems with the story, subject of a missing person report from California, claimed to be a witness in 2 other homicide investigations, claimed that she had been sexually assaulted at various times in her youth by Fleet White Jr., Fleet White Sr., and Uncle John Ramsey. Weird. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, let me just go. The woman's a goofball. Alright, so I guess... Let's see. Detectives found no evidence that Krebs have ever met Fleet Jr. or Ramsey. Her mother and niece weren't at the Whites for Christmas dinner. Almost nothing about her account of that evening fit into the circumstances of the JonBenét homicide. All right, so Hunter said, okay. Woman's a goofball, whatever. Mystery Woman Schiller miniseries. Interesting. I can't prove this, but okay. We don't really know where Nancy Krebs came from. Fleet says, no, I can't prove this, but I believe that one reason people came after us is demonstrated to the world there were other suspicious people out there. We were already in the crosshairs. We were the flavor of the month. 11 weeks. Boulder police concluded the Krebs investigation. See, I didn't know that Hunter was part of this. Having found no credible evidence to JonBenét's murder. It's never recanted. Can't be, okay. Alright, so people, Tom Miller, bribery. Oh my god. There's just so much stuff in this. It's so crazy. Alex Hunter. Intruder theory. James Kohler. That's the book I'm gonna get next. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. So James Kohler, who was for 2 years the chief investigator of Ramsey homicide under Lacey, had trouble getting with the program as he sought many of the odd bits of evidence under which Smith's intruder theory was originally built. An unidentified palm print on the wine cellar door, hair on the blanket, footprint in dust had been subsequently identified or explained away. Kohler's own review of the video taken of the crime scene convinced him that an intruder hadn't gained entrance through a basement window as Smith had proposed, and as Kohler details in for 2012 book, that's really late. Foreign faction, tiny abrasions found on JonBenét's body, which Smith believed were burns caused by a stun gun. Didn't match up. Now there was in Steve Thomas's book, there's some information about John Ramsey had some kind of catalog that had stun guns in it, and that was weird as hell. So, anyways, suspects of impressions, metal points of a toy train track found in the Ramsey basement. I've heard that too. That's the Burke theory. Kohler's efforts to refocus the investigation on the people known to be in the house that night weren't welcomed by his boss. Well, there's some powerful rich people involved with this and connected to other powerful rich people, of course. Although the body had been apparently wiped down, investigators found minute amounts of unidentified DNA, including male DNA mixed with JonBenét's blood. Find the DNA, mantra went, and you'd have your perpetrator. Lacey was determined to pursue the intruder scenario wherever it might lead. John Mark Carr. We already know about all that. It was just a bunch of nonsense, probably. All right, but that actually does give like a little bit of credence to the sex ring or whatever. Not embarrassed. Blah, blah, blah. So that was, that went down. That was nothing. No DNA match. Pretty sad. Ovarian cancer. So there's one detail in Steve Thomas's book where it says at the time Boulder the crime unit would reuse use tools over and over again and stuff and not wash them like in certain ways. I was like, what the hell? So this DNA thing I don't know exactly if that could explain any of the DNA, but that was just kind of strange reading that detail. They wouldn't wash tools that they were using for some of the investigation and stuff back then, allegedly. Exoneration based on new developments, touch DNA. Okay. And we had the whole like underwear, manufacturing thing back 10 years ago or whatever. That was weird too. I don't believe that either. 2 years later, okay, this is kind of interesting though. 2 years earlier, Lacey had conceded that the weak underwear sample could be an artifact and not the killer's at all. Okay, but she changed her mind. Kohler, where they changed their mind. but Kohler considers the letter to be misleading at best. Oh. Oh, yeah, because the exoneration. It fails to mention the investigators also found unidentified DNA from 2 males and 1 female under the victim's fingernails. Samples too tiny and badly degraded to put into a database. See, this is something I didn't know, because, like, too tiny and badly degraded. So, okay. Alright. So the touch DNA and that doesn't match. It's like 5 different people. Like, what the hell? So it's kind of a wild goose chase in some ways with the DNA. Like, I don't, there might be some chance that it might do something, but, I think maybe John Ramsey is just using that as kind of a red herring in some way. People have accused him of that too. DNA can be helpful, but it needs to be looked in the context of all other evidence. If you look at your trace samples involved in this, you follow the DNA evidence solely, then we should be looking at 6 perpetrators, not 1, which is wild. So Lacey's assertions there's no innocent explanation for 1 partial DNA profile showing up in 3 locations is also dubious. See, this is actually why this article is so good, because it goes into a lot of the stuff that's actually being discussed right now in the mainstream media and stuff, like the Netflix documentary. Like, okay, well, let's go a little bit into the minutia of the DNA lore. Dan Crane, a biochemist who was identified or tested as a DNA expert, criminal cases around the world, said the ability to gather new ever smaller amounts of DNA has raised increasing concerns about the provenance of the evidence. The DNA in your test could be there because of contact that was weeks, months, even years before the crime occurred. That's wild. It's not possible to make inferences about the tissue source here. We can't say that it came from semen or saliva or blood or anything. What if one of the medical examiners sneezed on one of the many... See, this is what I was talking about. What if one of the medical examiners sneezed on one of the many articles of clothing that came in contact with the other one? That's really fascinating stuff right there, because, like, that's what I was thinking when I read that thing in the Steve Thomas book. So there are just so many possibilities. And I know there might be even more DNA evidence now, but it's still kind of, to me, it's kind of just fits even more now than, I mean, it's just hard to really say, to nail that down. I don't think they, I mean, I don't understand why they would be able to nail it down more now than 10 years ago or whatever, necessarily. So I'm no expert. So, I mean, if people have some other contrary, I didn't watch the documentary. I refused to watch that, but it just seems like pure propaganda to me, honestly, from what I've read so far. And that doesn't mean that he's guilty, or Patsy was guilty, or Burke's guilty. Even there, it's just I think they know more than they're letting on. That's what I'm saying. Even the DNA samples Lacey cites did belong to someone involved in the crime. Crane is skeptical that such material would be ever admissible in court. So that's kind of wild. So that's just basically saying there's just too much DNA. At the end of the day, wait. My mouse is going out of control. Alright, why did this happen? Oh, wait. Oh, shoot. Okay. My mouse went out of control. Where is the DNA stuff? Alright. Dan Crane. Okay. Sorry about that. DNA in your test could be there because of a contact that was weeks. Okay, we already went there. DNA samples. Okay. At the end of the day, I don't know if there's enough to secure a conviction. Someone has optimistically concluded they can have confidence in these results, and that seems misguided. Hey, that sounds like John Ramsey. But Lacey's letter wasn't about convicting the owner of the phantom DNA as much as about absolving John, Patsy, or Burke Ramsey because the DNA didn't match the material. Declaration prompted Fleet and Priscilla White to renew their efforts to get an apology for the DA. They tried before to get Lacey to issue a public statement confirming that they had always been considered witnesses, not suspect, and being rebuffed. Yeah. After prompting from Ritter, now the governor, Lacey wrote a terse letter to the Whites affirming they were regarded as key witnesses and not suspects. No apologies forthcoming. Out from the umbrella at last. John Ramsey wasted a little time spending the news. He gave an interview to author. He keeps doing these interviews. Oh, Daily Beast. That's funny. 3 months after Lacey's apology article, and the guy hired one of the January 6th guys as his lawyer. It's kind of funny. Not to get political, the Daily Beast is one of those things too that's just kind of cringe. The article discussed how Ramsey had sold his big houses, was burning through his retirement savings, and lingering suspicions that someone in the family's inner circle killed his daughter. Well, that's a little bit odd. He and a few allies from Boulder suspect one particular friend who is familiar with the Ramsey's home and details of their life. However, District Attorney Mary Lacey said that this individual has been thoroughly vetted and cleared through the new DNA. Well, how do they know that? I mean, it's just so convoluted and weird. In early 2013, Daily Camera had another front page exclusive about the Ramsey case, citing anonymous sources. Charlie Brennan, a veteran of the Ramsey beat, Ramsey beat, like it's a separate beat now. It's really messed up. Reported that the grand jury had voted in 1999 to indict John and Patsy Ramsey for felony child abuse resulting in death. Brennan then went to court to seek release of the true bills signed by the jury foreman. Stan Garrett, the current Boulder district attorney, submitted 18 pages for judicial review. Oh, weird. Last fall, Judge Robert Lowenbach decided to release only 4 redacted pages. I don't think this has even been released yet. By now, 2025, showing that the grand jury had indeed sought to indict the parents on identical counts of felony child abuse and accessory charge. Oh, Lynn Wood. That's a January 6th guy, which is funny, which is really interesting. Called the True Billies a historical footnote in Monday More. So, as bad as like the stuff on that true crime garage, those allegations are, maybe it's like, you can think of like the Pizzagate thing, like, oh, those people were innocent, but like, we had Epstein, and I don't know if those people were innocent. I'm just saying, let's just say like around the corner was Epstein doing his business or whatever. So it's like, they could be onto something either way, like the people that are talking about the sex ring thing. Not saying that it involved the whites at all, but maybe she remembered different things, or I don't know. Maybe she's psychic. I don't know. Truth theorists. Okay. So this is a good question. Why had the country kept their existence secret? Who else? Known about the documents, had their suppression been a part of a plan to exonerate the Ramseys? What it was in the remaining pages the judge refused to release. Like I said, it's like the damn JFK assassination of true crime. D.A. Garnett says the whites are asking fair questions, even if he's not in a position to answer them all. Says he learned that about the Ramsey's true bills, in a meeting with Mary Lacey the day before he was drawn. 2009, okay? It's like, still, wow, it's going to be, it's 30 years next year. It's ridiculous. All right, Donald Trump, no. It was a Donald Trump thing. He did it. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. Garnett had tried to distance myself. Okay, the Ramsey nightmare. My God. He insists that he isn't bound by Lacey's exoneration letter, which he described as weird and a stretch. So even people involved in this think it's just like ridiculous. I actually think of the many things that were mishandled by the predecessors. There's an argument that the true bills should have been filed with the court. District attorney could say he wouldn't prosecute them. Oh, this is really weird stuff. So, what is it with Colorado too? So they're trying to do open records requests about all this stuff. So I don't know. The whites seem, I don't know. They could be, maybe they're all guilty and they're just doing these things. I don't know. The Ramseys and the whites. They're pushing these things just to like manipulate. I don't know. I don't think so. I think the whites are innocent. But last spring, I saw that. That was the footage I watched. They were trying to get the files. They're in court with their children. Okay, that's interesting. All we want, Fleet says, is for the truth to come out. So there's multiple articles on this Westword, which is a Colorado publication. I'd highly recommend reading this. This goes into a lot of details. I've never, I mean, some of the books aren't even up to date with some of this stuff. I mean there are some that are out, but like some of the the classic books are definitely out of date. Not the other books people write about it, but like the official investigative books. So this is just, I mean, the DNA thing really kind of makes you think about a lot of that stuff. So, but anyways, I thought that would be an interesting article to share and to go over because it has a lot of stuff, information in it. So if you find this interesting, or if it's not, if it's revelatory in any way about this case, definitely give it a like and subscribe, or let me know if you want to see more of these videos. That's about all.